Hi, welcome to Rest Assured Tutorials. This is the very first module, and in this module we are going to talk about some very basic terms that we should know before directly jumping to the Rest Assured tool. Also, if you have any doubt or you're not able to understand anything out of this session, you can write in the comment box below and I'll get back to you. And all the code or the files that we are discussing within these sessions, you're going to find links to them in the description box below, so you can download it and try it yourself. Okay, so now let's begin with the very first topic. What is a web service, or what is a REST API? What is web service testing? All of these very basic things. I'll try to explain you this first. Okay, and to make you understand this, I made an illustration, right, which will justify the whole scenario of this web services, how and why they are being used, how, from where they got originated. Okay, so suppose, think about this booking engine as an booking website, right? On that website, different users come with different requirements. Some wants to book a flight, some wants to book an hotel, right? Different requirement. Still, it manages to serve them all. We'll see that how it is able to do that. So suppose this is our website and there are multiple users that come to this website. Okay, everyone have different requirements, right? Suppose user 1 wants to book a flight from New Delhi to New York City on this particular date and with this number of passengers. What this booking engine or the booking website will do is it will send this information to different vendors. Now do not get confused by the name vendors. These vendors are nothing but different airline websites. This booking engine is basically send this information to this different vendors and will fetch out the information that user wants. What user wants, the flights with its price. So suppose vendor 2 has the availability and vendor 4 has the availability. So they will send back some information to the booking engine, right? So the information that went from the booking engine side to the vendors is known as your request. This is what you have been requested, right? This was your request, and the information that came against that is your response provided by the vendor, which you can see right here. This is your response. In the response, we have all the information that has been requested with the price, right? So this whole scenario where two websites are able to communicate is possible due to these web services or the underlying APIs. There is an underlying API behind this booking engine. There is this underlying API behind these vendors, right? They are able to communicate it irrespective of whatever the language these websites are in. They're still able to communicate in this fashion. A request has been generated, a response has been formed against that request. Okay, so this is how using this web services this scenario is possible. Okay, and if we talk about the same scenario, very practical example. Okay, so if I open a website here, there are multiple websites over here on the internet that uses this API, and the travel websites are the common example where there is an API is used. Okay, so suppose this is the website called makemytrip.com over which you can book some flights. So here I put the information New Delhi to New York on this date, and let's say number of passengers are 16, one-way flight. Okay, and I click on search. You will see I'll see different response from different airline websites. Okay, let it open. Okay, here we go. So we are getting response from the Etihad, Cathay Pacific, right? Air India. So how this information is coming to us? Through the underlying APIs, that is with the Make My Trip, with the Etihad Airways, they are able to communicate and give us the information that we want. Okay, so this is how this APIs work. If I talk about another very basic example that you've been using in your everyday life, like if we go to a new website, like we can take the example of the same website only. So if I click on this sign up, I have two options. Like I have to enter all my details again, or if I have a Google account or if I have a Facebook account, I can directly log into this website called Make My Trip. Okay, so how is it possible? Because Google shared its login API with the Make My Trip. Facebook shared its login API with the Make My Trip. So that's why it's possible. Again, there is this underlying API that is able to serve us. Okay, makes our life easy. Second thing is that why we, actually this scenario is like that Facebook is not directly sharing its users email and the password with this Make My Trip. Its API is making a login call. Same goes for the Google. Okay, I'll talk about the mechanism of this API in a while. So for now, I think it must be clear to you, what are these web services. Okay. Okay, so now we will talk about why do we use these web services. So again, I'll show an illustration. From that we'll try to understand this. So suppose there are two applications or two websites, right? One is written in the Java language and other one is written in the PHP language. So now issue arises here without these web services is that how they will able to communicate. Like if one will send the message to other, how it will understand that message. If it sends back a response, the first application won't be able to understand this, right? So that's why we need this API, an intermediate between these applications, right? That able to communicate with each other irrespective of their language of origin. Okay, so you don't have to design a new website or make changes in your code. It will stay like it is. You just have to design the API and the two web styles will start communicating with each other. So the same scenario in today's world looks like this. There's this application which is written in Java. There is this application which is written in PHP. Both of these has a thing called API. And that API is actually communicating with each other. This API is making this request call. This API is making a response. Right? So, this is why we need these web services. If I talk about, again the first example, like now a user can go to a single website, right? And compare the prices of flights from the various websites. Earlier it has to go to different website and make a comparison, but as Make My Trip is using the APIs provided by these airlines, right, it's able to fetch the information out of multiple websites on a single page. This is how API is making our life easier. Okay, but now there is this next thing that we should know. Okay, this is fine that this API is making call, they are able to understand it, but how these APIs are actually working, this is the next thing that we will learn. So basically, whenever a developer creates an API, he keeps two things in mind. That first is that these API calls should maintain a systematic flow. Also, it should maintain a secure flow. And this systematic and the secure flow is achieved by some protocols and some architectures. I'll come back to that. But first, let's try to understand that what is this systematic flow. Okay, so systematic flow is that when one API is requesting something, it will in some format it's going to write that request. That format should be understandable by this the other API. Okay, and the response that this PHP application's API is generating should be understood by this API which requested it. Right, so there should be symmetry. That means whatever language in which we are sending the request, response should come in that. Right, so we have to still their API, but they are working because they are maintaining a symmetry. So that's why a systematic flow is a very important thing that a developer keeps in mind when it designs an API. Next thing is the secure flow. So as this name suggests, secure flow, so we have to maintain kind of security. We have to maintain kind of encryption while sending this request, getting this response. Because think about these two applications as some banking application. Okay, like a very practical example, like if you have a debit card from one bank, right, you're still able to withdraw cash from other bank's ATM. Again, they are making some API calls, they are able to communicate with each other. So in that scenario, what happens is that a critical user information get passed. Suppose this is the bank 1 and this is the bank 2. Bank 1 is sending a transaction is happening. A bank 1 is sending critical user information like the account, remaining balance and all in the form of request. Okay, after transaction got succeeded, it will send back the balance with the reduced response. So in this kind of API call, critical information is getting back and through. So we need some kind of encryption or security mechanism so that the user information will stay safe. So that's why this is the second most important thing that kept in mind by a developer while creating this APIs. Now these two things can be achieved either from the SOAP protocol or from the REST architecture. SOAP protocol is XML based. I'll come back to the XML, what is an XML, and REST architecture supports XML as well as the JSON. And I'll tell you that 90% of the APIs that are present in the market today are based on REST. Why? Because REST uses the JSON. You will yourself understand it why JSON is much more popular when I'll show you the example. Okay, now let's just try to understand that what is a SOAP protocol, or we can say APIs that are that are based on SOAP protocol, how they work, and what is an XML. Okay, then I will come to the REST architecture. So I'll again go back to this example where this booking engine was requesting an information, vendors are sending a response. So just think about these API, this underlying API are SOAP based. So as they are SOAP based, so the request and response format will be XML. If they were REST based, then the response and XML folder can be XML based or the JSON based. Okay, so just forget about the rest, just think about these. The APIs are based on SOAP protocol. So I'll show you that this same request, how it will actually look like in the form of an XML. So I've already created an XML. So right here, if I open it in the, okay, let's just open in the Chrome. And here we go. Okay, so this is how it looks in front, like New Delhi, from New Delhi to New York City on this date with this number of passenger. But if I right click on this page and click on this view source, I will actually see the XML. Okay, so the very first thing that you have noticed within an XML is that there are so many tags present. Like it starts with this head tag, your critical information resides in the body tag. And whatever tag that you are starting, you have to end it. So the body tag is ending here, the head tag is ending here. And all the information, all the pieces of information that is going as the request to different vendors are in the form of tags only. Like this from tag is starting, information resides in between, then the from tag is ending. Same for the to date and the passengers. Right, so this is how your typical XML looks like. Bit of extra information here and there, right? Like multiple tags that you have to remember. This is how the XML looks like when we were used to SOAP protocol in the APIs. In the same way, how this XML looks like, the same way response looks like. So if I open the response that we got from different vendors, right, this response will look like this, an addition of price. So again, if I click on the view page source, you will see the XML. Again, that same XML but with an extra piece of information. Okay, so if the APIs is based on SOAP protocol, this is how it will send the response and the request. Okay, using the XML. Now the problem with this XML is that you have to use so many tags. Like even if you're building a SOAP request, there are some more tags that got added, like the SOAP envelope, SOAP header, then your actual content, then you'll close those tags. So your information is very little, but still you are making a very big request. Okay, so earlier, this is how work used to be done. But after some time, REST was introduced, and REST was an architecture, not a protocol. So basically, by the architecture, what we mean is that protocol says that there are some set of rules that you have to follow, hard-coded rules you have to follow. But REST has much more flexibility in it. It's an architecture. Okay, it supports XML, like if your API is old and use the XML, still it will be supported by the REST. But it also introduces us JSON, a very easy, simple language that can be used to build a request as well as the response. So if the same request, I'll show you how it actually looks like in the format of JSON. This request, you will see that how easy to create a JSON. It's almost natively English, like anybody can understand it and very easily learn it. So this is actually how your request JSON looks like. Right, no tags, no extra information, only the information that you want to pass within the request. Okay, everything comes in the form of key and value pair. Whatever you're seeing on the left hand side is your key. Whatever present on the right hand side has its value. So from was my key, New Delhi is my value, 2 is my key, New York is my value, and same goes for the other values. Okay, starts with the curly brace, ends with the curly brace, everything comes in the quotes. And this is how it looks like. So it's very simpler, it's very easier to understand compared to this XML. So this is why the 90% of the APIs that are present on the internet today are based on this JSON or the REST architecture. Much more flexible, easier to understand, much more compatibility than the SOAP. Okay, so within our sessions, we are going to talk about most of the times about the REST architecture, but I'll also give you brief about the SOAP protocol. Also, I'll give you an idea about it. But still, industries are focusing over this, so are we. Okay. Okay. So this is about of how your SOAP protocol works, how your REST architecture works with the APIs. Now the main thing comes here, that how to test these web services. So we test these web services using the different tools that are present in the market, and one of them is the REST Assured. Okay, but coming to the REST Assured, I'll tell you about it. We should know about it, that there are all other tools also available, like the SOAP UI, very popular one. Okay, and there is also this Postman that is used. So first let's understand what's the basic difference between this REST Assured and the different tools, and why REST Assured is preferred. Okay,